Shalom everybody, James Trim here. Today I want to talk to you about the Torah and abortion. Now, Judaism unfortunately has been given a bad name on the topic of abortion from secular and from Reformed and even some conservative Jews. And in fact, the Torah prohibits abortion. And I want to address a passage that has been used, and it's really unfortunate. The Torah prohibits abortion, and yet there are some Reformed Jews and whatnot that are literally filed lawsuits to protect a supposed right to abortion, which doesn't exist, trying to create one under a religion right of some kind, when in fact the Torah prohibits abortion. So let's look at what the Torah actually says. So there is a passage that the pro-abortion people use, or try to use, in the original Hebrew text of Exodus 21, verses 22 through 25, to indicate that a fetus is not really a person. And that they claim that a mistranslation of the word harm in the Septuagint Greek to mean in the form led to a false doctrine in this regard. In fact, the translation issue is just a distraction. To begin with, let's look at the passage from the Masoretic text, Exodus 21, or Shemot 21, verses 22 through 25. Before we get going here, I need to ask you to please donate to support these videos. You can do that by sending donations by PayPal to donations@wnae.org, or by clicking on the donate link in the video description. The other thing you'll find in the video description is a link for a PDF of handouts where you can follow along in the video with us. And also, I want to encourage everybody to please like this video, subscribe to these videos, comment to these videos in the comments section, and share these videos on social media with your friends. Particularly liking, subscribing, and commenting help us with the YouTube algorithms to get these videos out to more people. That's what the YouTube algorithm uses to decide what videos to recommend to people. Okay, so let's look at this passage. Exodus 21, verses 22 through 25 says, "If men fight and hurt a woman with a child, hurt a woman with child," in other words, a pregnant woman, "so that her fruit depart from her," in other words, so she has a miscarriage, "and yet no harm follow, he shall be surely punished according as the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine." So the woman has a miscarriage, but no other harm comes to her. Verse 23, "And if any harm follow, then you shall give life for life." So if the woman dies as a result of the miscarriage, for example, life for life, you execute it's murder. Verse 24, "Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe." Okay. The case has been made that there's a disparity here. And the disparity is that if the woman has a miscarriage, but is otherwise unharmed, then the perpetrator only pays a fine. But if the woman dies, then the perpetrator is executed. This is supposed to prove that the fetus does not have the same value as a human life in the Torah, and thus this is used to support abortion. Let's turn to our next handout, Rashi and the Talmud. However, a note in Rashi's commentary on this passage gives some important clarity. Rashi was one of the great He's a commentator of the Torah. Rashi writes, "You shall give a life for a life. Our rabbis differ on this matter. Some say that he must actually give up his life, and some say that he must pay money, but not actually a life. And if one intends to kill one person and kills another, he is exempt from the death penalty and must pay his heirs, his victim's heirs, his value, as it would be if he were sold in the marketplace." Okay, so what Rashi is saying here is that if a person kills somebody, they were trying to assault one person and they ended up assaulting and killing another person, that the act of killing the other person was a tort. It wasn't a criminal act. It wasn't a murder. It was a negligence. And since it was a negligence, he argues that when it says life for life, it's not talking about an execution. It is talking about financial compensation. Okay? And let's look and see what the Talmud says on this topic. Babylonian Talmud, Baba Kama 83b. It says, "Why pay compensation? Does the divine law not say eye for eye? Why not take this literally to mean putting out the eye of the offender? Let not this enter your mind, since it has been taught, you might think that where he put out his eye, the offender's eye should be put out, or where he cut off his arm, the offender's arm should be cut off, or again, where he broke his leg, the offender's leg should be broken. Not so, for it is laid down, he that smites any man, and he that smites a beast. Just as in the case of smiting, a beast compensation is to be paid, so also the case of smiting a man, compensation is to be paid." Okay, so this actually ties in somewhat when Yeshua talks about you've heard an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Well, the Sadducees believed that if somebody through negligence knocked somebody else's tooth out, that you go to court, you sue them, and if you win, it's a criminal act. If you win, the court holds the person down and knocks their tooth out. Okay? This was, to the Pharisees, this was absurd. It wasn't saying, when it said an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, it didn't mean that you hold the person down and knock out their tooth, or you hold the person down and pluck out their eye. What it meant was that you owed the person compensation. It was a law not of revenge, but of liability, just like we have today. So that if my negligence causes somebody the loss of their eye, I must compensate them for the loss of their eye financially. How was this done? Well, the system that the oral Torah used, the judges laid down, was that the value of eye. I mean, no, you can't really value an eye, right? I mean, which one of us would say, okay, I'll sell my eye. You go ahead and hold me down and pluck out my eye and pay me. And I'm good with that. Okay? Nobody would ever do that. So an eye is invaluable. It can't be replaced. But you have to put a value on it. I mean, you have to, because there's, we're not going to go into the barbarism of holding somebody down and plucking their eye out. It doesn't help anybody anyway. Okay. So the rule was made at the time. The concept was laid out. The rule of liability was you took the value of an able-bodied slave and the value of a slave with one eye, and you subtracted the difference. And that was the value of the eye. Same thing with the tooth or whatnot. That was the value. The value of a slave minus that, appendage or whatever. And this was intended to compensate somebody financially for the loss of their eye, because maybe they can't, plow the field as well anymore for the rest of their life. And so they've got a financial loss. So Rashi says, when it says a life for a life here, it's in parallel to an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That doesn't mean, except the Sadducees thought that, because they didn't accept the oral law, the Sadducees thought that meant you held somebody down and you plucked their eye out. But the Pharisees understood this as a law of financial liability due to negligence. And so, since it says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and it says in the same parallel pattern, a life for a life, then Rashi says that it's the value of the whole slave minus no slave at all. The value of a living slave versus minus the value of the dead slave, if you will. So essentially the value of a slave. And that was the what a person would be financially compensated. So what Rashi then is saying, and in combination with the understanding of the Talmud on legal liability in general, is that if two men are fighting and hurt a woman with a child that's with child, she's pregnant, so that her fruit departs from her, in other words, she has a miscarriage, and yet no other harm follows her, she doesn't die, he shall surely be punished according, in other words, the judges will determine the value, and he has to pay a fine based upon the value, financial value, the financial liability. And you say, oh, well, that means that abortion is okay because it's not murder, because it's not the same. Because if, in the next verse, if any harm follows, in other words, if the woman dies, then you give life for life. But the problem is that the next two verses say, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. And that terminology in Jewish law means legal liability, financial liability. The value of a tooth, the value of an eye. And that value is determined by, in Jewish law, by the value of a slave versus minus the value of a one-eyed slave to determine the value of the eye. So Rashi is saying then when it says life for life, it's the value of a living slave versus the value of a dead slave. That's how you make the determination for the financial compensation for the death of the woman. Not that that's fair in the end, but which one of us would say, okay, you can go ahead and, some crazy people do some things in times with insurance schemes, but the reality is usually they're terminally ill or something. But which one of us would really say, oh, you can just go ahead and kill me and pay my heirs, so that my heirs can have the money for it? No. Nobody would give up their life, and nobody would give up the life of their loved one for money, okay, for any amount of money. At least not anybody that wasn't perhaps criminally insane, but certainly an evil person. Okay. So that means there is no disparity in this passage of Torah. There is no disparity at all. When it says an eye for an eye, it's talking about liability, financial liability. When it says life for life, it's talking about financial liability. And in verse 22, in the miscarriage, is also talking about financial liability. Therefore, there is no disconnect. There is no disparity between the life of the mother and the life of the child, the life of the fetus. The life of the unborn child. If the life of the unborn child killed through negligence is or through somebody that was trying to harm somebody else and accidentally caused the miscarriage, is a financial liability. So also, if the woman dies from the miscarriage, is she her heirs then compensated with financial liability? No disparity. Okay, let's now look at some passages and talk about some things in about the idea of the value of life in Torah. And let's look at Mishnah Sanhedrin 4b. It's concerning the murder of Abel by Cain, and it says, the bloods of your brother cry out. Genesis 4:10. It does not say the blood, singular, of your brother, but the bloods, plural, of your brother, his blood and the blood of those who were destined to be born from him. So Mishnah Sanhedrin 4:5 here is telling us that when somebody commits a murder, they are guilty not only of killing the person that they killed, but all of their potential descendants, all of their progeny, all of their unborn children. So here, the Jewish law, as recorded in the Mishnah, gives us a parity between the life of a human being and the life of their unborn children, and that they are both of equal value. Moreover, we read in Deuteronomy 23:7 in the Torah, "Keep you far from a false matter, and the innocent and righteous slay you not, for I will not justify the wicked." So here we are prohibited from slaughtering or from killing an innocent. Life begins at conception in the scriptures. Let us look at this. Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 4 through 5. "And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Before I formed you in the belly, I knew you, and before you came forth out of the womb, I sanctified you. I have appointed you a prophet unto the nations." This is talking about Jeremiah, the prophet. And it is saying that Yahweh knew him before he formed him in the belly. That Yahweh knew him before he came forth out of the womb. He was sanctified before he came forth out of the womb. And he was appointed a prophet unto the nations before he came forth out of the womb. This again tells us that life begins at conception. We can also find this in Psalm 139, 13 through 16, in a beautiful way. It says, "For you have made my reins, you have knit me together in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that my soul knows right well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes did see my unformed substance, and in your book they were all written, even the days that were fashioned, when as yet there were none of them." So this again tells us before a person is even born, when they are still being formed in the womb, they are a person. Abortion is the murder of the unborn. It is prohibited by Torah. Torah gives us a clear, Tanakh gives us clear statements about the fact that we are persons when we are yet unborn in the womb. We are already persons, and that there is a parody between the death of a person and the death of a person's progeny or unborn descendants, unborn children. And that when in Genesis chapter 4 verse 10, when it says the bloods of your brother cry, when Cain killed Abel, and we're told that the bloods of Abel cried out, that it doesn't say singular blood of Abel, but bloods, because it was not just Abel, but all of Abel's children and children's children and children's children's children. No doubt that when a person commits murder, they are regarded in the Torah as guilty not only of that murder, but of the murder of the potential progeny of that person, which are by definition the unborn. Okay. I don't think there's leaves any doubt that the Torah prohibits abortion. I want to remind everybody to please donate to support these videos. You can donate by clicking on the donate link in the video description. You can also donate by sending donations by PayPal to donations at wnae.org. Please also like this video and subscribe to these videos, and let us know what you think of our videos in the comments section on this video, and share these videos with your friends on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, etc. And until next time, shalom.